And good morning, everyone. Welcome to Small Biz Matters, the half-hour program where you work on your business rather than in it. My name is Alexi Boyd, your trusted admin advisor, lover of all things small business and expert when it comes to admin, really. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today, which I'm super excited about. It's actually a bit of a sneak peek to one of my presentations that is coming up at one of our fantastic local networking groups. And those of you who aren't aware, maybe you're sitting in your home office right now having a listen to good old 2HHH FM, you might realise that we actually have some wonderful networking groups available to small businesses, particularly in this case, this one called Home-Based Business Network. And that's all about targeting those people who do work from home, don't tend to get out and do a lot of co-working or interacting with other businesses because they simply don't have the requirements to do so. And that's what I really like about HBBN. So I'm super excited to be presenting with them next Tuesday, which is great. Unfortunately, we won't have a show, but instead we're going to have a little bit of a sneak peek on what we're going to be talking about at HBBN next week. And those are some things that I'm quite passionate about. My regular listeners will know that part of the thing that makes me driven and excited about small business is educating small business, because I don't believe there is enough information out there to really help us understand what the requirements are, what our legal obligations are, perhaps, or what we have to do when we're in different situations. And those situations might range from what we have to do with the tax office through to local council, through to what our compliance requirements are, especially around dealing with contractors, superannuation, and employees. And those of you who say, well, I'm just a one-man band, I don't really have much to do with other people because I don't employ anyone and it's just me, there's plenty of regulations out there that you do need to be aware of. So we're going to touch on a couple of those things today, which I'm really excited about. And it's going to hopefully give you some top tips as well around admin strategies too. So look, let's get straight into it. Look, Small Biz Matters, those of you who are not my regular listeners will know, it's all about small business education. It's about a little bit of biz hacks, little tips and strategies you might pick up now and then that you can utilise in your business. And we're all about the practical. We want to make sure that you walk away from either a program or perhaps a presentation with just a little bit more knowledge about how you can be a little bit more efficient when it comes to your business and work more effectively. There's a lot of distractions out there. There's a lot of things out there that are literally designed to stop us from being as productive as we possibly can, because, you know, these companies would rather that we were productive looking at their screens or looking at their advertising material or even simply just looking at their logo. So some of those things we're going to discuss today are about time management, time effectiveness, but also the importance of taking a break and the importance of balancing that time with some good quality me time as well, which, by the way, is okay to do in the middle of the day. So let's get straight into it. We're going to talk about strategies to help get your admin under control, first of all. Now, the reason why this is a struggle for businesses is because many times when people think about admin, they automatically think of their books, or they think of their receipts, or they think of punching things into a machine. And what we were doing 15 years ago with these pieces of admin is very, very different to what happens these days. And I'm going to explain to you some great programs and apps and pieces of software that are out there to help businesses minimise the amount of time that you spend working on those receipts and those bits of admin that can be quite time consuming and fairly ineffective as well. So the top areas where businesses generally feel out of control are emails and maybe the filing of documents, whether that's soft copy or hard copy. In the old days, we used to have an in tray. If we talk about, nobody talks about in trays anymore. We used to have an in tray that would be piled high, well above the standard couple of inches that it was meant to be, and it would overflow. I've seen some people's offices that their entire offices looks like one giant big in tray. Oddly, sometimes a lot of lawyers' offices look like that. And the transition to becoming paper-free is quite daunting as well. Another place where areas feel small business feels out of control is invoicing, cash flow and bookkeeping. So understanding the nuances of their money and the seasonality of their business as well, and invoicing, the importance of doing that as quickly as possible, and also keeping on top of your bookkeeping. So I'm going to give you some tips about that today as well. And diary management. I know that sounds a bit strange. Many of us came from a corporate world background where those directors might have had an executive assistant who all they seemed to do was look after the manager's diary. And the reason for that is because it's actually quite complex. And if you don't manage your diary effectively, and I'm not just talking about when the meetings are, but actually just managing that time, that's all comes in with diary management as well. So we're going to look at those three things. So we're going to look at diary management first. So diary is no longer an A4, document, not a document, a book that we used to walk around with that, we would die a million deaths if it fell out of our briefcase and we wouldn't have it anymore. We're now talking about, obviously, digital calendars, and we're no longer just talking about those that live on our computers, but we're actually speaking of those that are in the cloud. The reason why I recommend that everybody has a diary or a calendar in the cloud is because 9 times out of 10, most of us would have a family member, a partner, a business associate, perhaps even a contractor who needs to be aware of what your movements are. So we don't have executive assistants anymore. What we have is other people involved in our lives, particularly when we are small businesses, that need to be aware of where we are, what we're doing, even which area of Sydney we're in when it comes to parenting. And a great way to do that is to keep that diary online. Now, in the cloud, I should say. When you've got diaries in the cloud, such as, let's look at Google Calendar. That would be a very typical, well-known diary. Google Cal is great because you can colour code the different aspects of your life. Frighteningly, if we take a look at my Google Calendar, there's probably, I'm looking at it right now, there's about 8 different colours because you've got stuff that involves family and routine, just the everyday, taking the kids to ballet, taking the kids to sport thing. Then you've got, you've got 2 businesses in the family like we do. There's 2 different calendars there that are important for that. You've got your social stuff. You've got your, you might be looking at trying to keep a timesheet within a calendar so you can see diarised when you've got different things on. You might have medical appointments. You might have a family member that you need to look after and make sure that person's colour-coded differently. So colour-coding is a great way, and you can keep each of these diaries separate and you can switch them on and off. So, for example, I have a colleague of mine who works for me, and because we sometimes work in the office, we sometimes work in one another's homes, we need to know where each other are. So I have enabled her to be able to view, not edit, but just view my calendar so she can see where I am at any time. She can't see where I'm taking the kids to sport. She can't see what my husband's movements are for his business, but she can only see mine. So you can switch that on and off as to who can actually access those calendars. It's very handy when you've got colleagues or even contractors that need to be aware of your whereabouts. So the other useful thing about these calendars is you can turn them on and off. You can just view only some of them and not others if it becomes a bit daunting to have a look at all of them as well. And I like it because they obviously, when they're online, they instantly they update instantly. So you make a change, then the other person can see them straight away. One thing to bear in mind is that you don't need to have your entire life in Google in order to operate a calendar. You just need a Google account. Now, quite a few people find it a bit confusing when we talk about Google accounts. They're not necessarily, I have to have all of my emails, all of my life, everything in Google. And that's not the case at all. You can obviously have your emails in your own server, your own email management system, which might be operated by an external IT provider, for example. You don't have to be operating your emails through the Google system. All you need is a login. Now, that gives you Gmail. You might not use it for anything, but a separate login that you can then access all of the Google opportunities. And there are quite a lot of things there that you should start to explore as a business. So as an aside as well, I would recommend it's a good idea to get yourself a Google account. If nothing else, just to sit on your business name, just to grab it like you would a website, for example, just so you can have that listed. So some of the things I recommend to my clients when they're setting up is grab perhaps your business name at gmail.com and also register a YouTube channel in your business name as well. Now, the world might move on from YouTube in 5 or 6 times when you finally get around to doing videos, but in the meantime, you've at least grabbed that name for yourself and no one else can take that. So that's a good tip about Google in general. So again, you don't need to have a Google account in order to be running these apps or these features of Google that are very handy. There are, of course, other options other than Google Calendar, but I'm a fan because it's all in one place and it's very easy to share and have other people view it and that sort of thing. So speaking about filing, as I said, gone are the days where you have an inbox and a huge pile of paperwork that's going in. And so I like to encourage people to become paper-free. Now, that can be quite daunting when you are looking at that giant filing cabinet or everything around you is paper. You don't have to start from 5 years ago. You can literally start from today. The important thing is that you set up this systemization efficiently and effectively to begin with, so that you're not just, which we see all the time, throwing files onto a desktop and hoping that you'll get around to categorizing those later. There's a really simple way to start from scratch when it comes to organising your filing system in a soft copy. So a simple way to do it is to just divide it into business and personal. So there's your first two folders: work, personal. And then within your personal, you might have finance, family, and household. Your family has all of your fun stuff, your emails, or whatever it is that you want to hang on to that's important, your memories, the whatever it is, soft copies of things that you want to keep that's a memory. Your household might include all of your household documentation. It might talk about projects that you've got around the home, some research that you've done, for example. And it might be bills of tradies that have come through and all that sort of stuff. Your finance, when it comes to your personal stuff, is all of your banking, your personal tax, your medical stuff, your vehicles that are all on a personal nature. And I guess when we run small businesses, it's very easy for those things to become a bit muddied. If you file things separately from a soft copy filing system point of view, you might find it a little bit more philosophically easier to extract yourself from the business as well. So literally distinguishing when there is a vehicle between it being personal or it being of a business nature would be quite helpful. Looking at the work side now, it's quite similar. You've got finance again, which is again vehicles. You might have your insurance in there. You might have your legal stuff in there. You might have your bookkeeping and admin in there. And then you've got your client work. And a great way to divide up client work is simply old and current. And then you can start building the filing structure from there. And the last part you want to have is business development. And that categorises all of your sales, your marketing, your research you might be doing, coming to these fabulous events, all those bits and pieces that are relating to growing your business, which is very separate from your client work and, again, very separate from your finance. Now, that's a really simple filing structure to just get started. The one thing I would suggest is that when you are creating a filing structure on your hard drive or in the cloud, wherever that might be, where you keep all your files, make sure that you mirror that for your emails as well. So you're always looking at the same systemization of filing. Your brain is going through the same step-by-step process in order to categorize a document or a piece of information or a piece of research. That way you're not saying to yourself in emails something is marketing, but on your desktop something is BD. So think about trying to mirror those across the different ways. And also trust in your search functions. It doesn't matter a great deal. I mean, there's plenty of people out there who just shove everything into My Documents. And you know why that's okay? Because your computer now has very powerful ability to search through individual words within a document or within an email to actually source that original file that you're looking for. It's not that difficult, particularly if you are very, very good at naming your files. It's very important that you name files correctly. I also, whenever I have a document, even though I can go back and find out when it was created, I still like to put in the file name of a document, the actual date when it was created, particularly with client work. So-and-so had an engagement letter. So it was originally created on the 13th of March. And that's the reason for that is at a glance, when I'm looking through their files, I might say, oh, that's when I started working with that person. Straight away, I know. I don't have to look at the file and then get info and find out when the file was created. So it's a good way to work out the history of documents is simply by naming them that. And also versions, version 1, version 2, version 3 is helpful because then you can see if you want to keep the previous versions, you can see how they maneuver. One thing I would say about Google Docs when we're talking about versions, Google's is great because it remembers changes from a long way back. And you can also track changes in that way because you can find earlier versions from X number of months or however long ago it is. But please remember that you are responsible for the documents that you store on Google, and if they have any client privacy or client information that could be considered private, you need to make sure that they are safe. We're going to talk a little bit about that a little bit later in the program. So we've got the philosophy of systemization, and having said that, that's a really important backbone to your soft copy filing if you're thinking about going paper-free. Now, there's lots of really great ways to do this. You've got this fabulous thing called an iPhone, or a magical device, as some people call them, sent from my magical device. And you have the option of taking photographs of documents. Now, Dropbox even has this great feature where if you take a photo of what it clearly recognises as a document, it will actually turn it into a PDF right there, which is so handy. So one thing about going paper-free, it's really important that you keep these apps updated, and because sometimes they get a little bit buggy, and the next update will generally iron out those things. So if you're not keeping your systems updated, make sure that you do on a regular basis. And you can choose between, Google Drive, Dropbox, OneDrive. They all have a similar ability to store documents. The important part is thinking about that systemization and making sure that your documents are stored in the right place. Now, that doesn't mean you have to name every single receipt. So I've come across some clients who have literally written petrol and then the date and then what client it was relating to on they've renamed every document. That's absolutely unnecessary. You only have to keep it for the purposes of having an image and purposes of having evidence. Your accounting software is where you capture what it is and the date and what it was for and what job it was relating to. Don't double up. So you don't have to rename these documents. The IMG document name is just fine, and you don't even have to put them in different months. That is also unnecessary because you can often find, again, using that search function, you can find quite easily the original place from which this document, the date on which it was created. So it's quite easy to find. Therefore, you would know what date it's for. And again, the date would be captured in your accounting system anyway. So you've captured all these documents. Now, one really great way to do that is to do it on Google Drive on your phone. And the way you do that is opening up your Google Drive, opening a folder that you have named Receipts, and then you hit the plus button at the bottom of your screen, and you use your camera, you take a picture, and you add it. That's it. You don't have to do anything else. Then later on, when it comes to doing your bookwork, that's where all your documentation is. You can also use that Google Drive to drag and drop the attachments that come in as emails that are relating to tax, such as your insurance documents or, your certificates of insurance or everything. Anything that's financial, you can pop into that folder. Now, this is sort of, I guess, the poor man's option. This is what you do if you don't want to be paying $50 a month for software. But there are great online accounting systems such as Xero or such as Receipt Bank, which will capture these and do a lot more than just grab the image for you. They are much more powerful programs that take away the time-consuming actions. And we're going to talk about those a bit later. So some tips for going paper-free. You might start requesting everything in emails. So you'll have from your banks, from your insurance, from your anybody who sends receipts, start asking for them, or bank statements, start asking for them in PDF format. I believe it is now legal. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's that banks now have to provide bank statements in an electronic form 5 years previous. Many of the banks are enabling you to be able to do that online, which is very handy from a bookkeeper's perspective. If you're trying to remember something that you've done, maybe a client conversation that you've had, write an email to yourself. So say, okay, I don't really want to write this down anywhere else. I don't want to send it to the clients, but I want to remember that I had this conversation with this client. And the great thing about emails is they date stamp it and they time stamp it. And you can send it to yourself and just file it in that client's file in your emails. Synchronize your emails on your phone and computer. I can't believe I was doing this for years where I had my emails on my computer were different from my phone. I think I was about 2 years behind everyone else. That is a must just to know what you're looking at on your different devices is exactly the same is really important. Talk to your email provider about getting that happening as soon as possible, just so you can have it all mirrored. Start with finance documents because they're the obvious ones. Getting those online first is the easiest thing. And obviously, like I said, draw a line in the sand. Keep that as your starting point. Today's the day. It doesn't have to be the 1st of July or anything like that. Just say from now on, at this point, I'm going to make sure this file holds all my finance documents and it will be easier to find in the long run. Now, this is important because we keep on talking about online and cloud and how fabulous it is and how you can grab it and search for it, but you must have a backup system. And whether that be a secondary backup system on your actual computer, on your desk, sitting there on your actual desk at home, you might have a terabyte drive, and every week you have an auto backup, which your computer does. And a couple of suggestions that have come from some great IT guys that I know in terms of what to do with this backup. Number one, unplug it. Don't get one of those ones that are automatically locked into the cloud so that they are talking on your Wi-Fi at all times. You want this system to be completely separate from your hard system that is your computer. Because if you do get infiltrated by some sort of ransomware attack or some sort of virus, it's just as easy for it to jump across into that hard drive because of the Wi-Fi system or because it's literally connected to your computer. And that's the point of this exercise, is to protect that information. So copy everything across. Unless you're a video production guy or you're doing something with massively huge files, one of those terabyte drives that cost a whopping $100 from one of the retailers is all you need. However, double backup system. So you've got that backed up, that's fine, but you also want to do it a second time and physically pick up that drive and move it to a different place. You might have one at your office at work and one at your office at home. You might have one at your office at home and another one at your partner's work or your parents' house. The reason for that is you lose your computer or it gets infiltrated by a virus and then you lose one drive, you've at least got the second drive. And it's painful, I know, but it's very important. Recently, a friend of mine was infiltrated by a ransomware attack, and we were very lucky that we managed to get him onto a great IT guy that did actually rescue everything. But what's a lot of people find amazing is that it got into his Dropbox. They got through to his Dropbox and they encrypted all of his files. So he could see all the files were still sitting there online when he logged in on any computer, as you do. He could see they were there tantalizingly, but he couldn't open them. And he couldn't do anything with them, which was absolutely disastrous. Managed to get the ransomware out of his machine and out of his Dropbox and save all those files, thankfully. But that's not always a guarantee. Had he had the backup, he could have just changed his password and then perhaps reintegrated all that stuff back into his computer. As you can hear, I'm not really a tech head, but I know that would work as long as that particular device didn't get attacked as well. And another really great way to going paper-free is client notes. So when you are having, as I mentioned, discussions with a client, something that you have on your own private notes in the background, apart from the actual client work, it would go over all the discussions that you have with them about, the phone conversations that you wish you'd remembered. If you date and timestamp those by putting in a Word document what you said when you spoke about it and what was explained, I do that whenever I deal with the ATO on behalf of a client, and maybe a reference number that comes with it. That's a really good way to make sure that 18 months down the track when the client comes back to you and says, "What do you mean you didn't set up workers' compensation for me?" And you go back through your notes and you say, "Well, I did talk to your office manager and that particular person did say that she was going to do it, and that's what my notes say 18 months ago." So that's really good as a backup system as well. So you need to have your mental backups, which I would consider your client notes, and your physical backups, which are your terabyte drives that sit on there, and then also your soft copy backups, which so that you're not dealing with hard copies of receipts anymore, because we know that they disappear pretty quickly. Now, what we might do now is just take a quick break on Small Biz Matters and just have a quick listen to a song or two. And then when we come back, I'm going to give you some top tips on some great admin apps that I've discovered in the last little while. I've been using them in my own business and they're absolutely fantastic. You're listening to Triple H 100.1 FM. We'll be back after this. You are, of course, listening to Small Biz Matters here on Triple H 100.1 FM. And today we are talking about all things admin and record keeping and trying to do some great strategies for your business. So if you walk away from today's program with maybe just one or two things that you can implement in your business today, it has certainly been a valuable use of your time. Just before the break, we were talking a little bit about the systemization of filing and how you can go through the process of becoming paper-free. It's okay to draw a line in the sand and just start from today, but have a bit of a system in place and give it some thought about how you're going to, where you're going to put your finance documents, where you're going to put your personal documents, and how you're going to categorise all those things. I would suggest as well, as an option, is trying to extract your business life from your personal life when it comes to your emails. I have a bit of a crazy system, which I don't recommend to all people, but I have my personal emails going through my Mac mail program, and then I have my business emails going through Outlook. And then I also have some community group stuff that I use my Gmail account for. Now, that's not entirely sensible, but when you've got 40 or 50 emails flying around a day, and there's the potential for your client stuff to fall off the bottom of the page and get lost, that's why it's a good idea to extrapolate those two different aspects of your life into two separate actual programs, because then you can actually turn off that program. You want to see those alerts come in when you're getting those important client emails. You don't really need to see them come in when you're talking about the autumn fair, for example. And it's easy to shut down a program so you don't get those alerts. So have a think about trying to extrapolate those different parts of your life in different email programs. Not for everyone, but it might work for some of you who have got rather busy situations, a bit like having colour-coded calendars, which we mentioned before the break. So I wanted to talk to you about some great admin apps that I've come across recently. Those of you who have been regular listeners to the program will know that I absolutely love a program called Trello. It's entirely free. It works beautifully and responsively across all devices, whether it be your tablets, your iPhones and your computers. It's a fantastic program that helps you manage client work. You can create checklists if you've got typical scenarios where you go through the same process with every client. Even if it's the simple process of onboarding a client, you don't miss any steps. Create a checklist, rename it for each client, and then go through the process for each one. You create columns across the page and then move those cards, which could be a job, into, say, with client or with you or ready for invoicing or dormant or finished. So you can have columns across the page that actually help you navigate where you are with each job. This is particularly useful if you've got a lot of clients. So I'll use my bookkeeping business, for example. I have about 35 different clients for which I have to do a BAS for, yay, every single quarter. And obviously the process for doing a BAS is almost identical for every person, but they're going to be at different stages. So I use Trello card for each client where I list out the full process and then I just tick the boxes. So at a glance, I can open up a card and say, God, I haven't touched that person's stuff for a few days. Where was I up to? What was I waiting on? And then you open up the card and you go, oh, that's right. I was waiting for them to give me that insurance certificate or this piece of documentation. And you go back to them and you remind them, I'm still waiting on this. I can't go any further before I get this, for example. So that's a great way that Trello can help you manage your client work. Another great piece of software for CRM, which is your client relationship management. So there's the client work, which I like to use Trello for, and there's also client relationship, and that kind of helps you track where you're at with different potential clients, your sales, for example, or your marketing, who you're talking to and where you're up to with that conversation. And I like to use Zoho for that. And it's a great little system. You can call clients warm, cool and hot, and you can distinguish where you're at with each of those, or you can set little date and timestamps about when you want to contact them next. They might say, look, I'm going to go overseas for a couple of weeks. Can you get in touch with me when I return? So you make a note about when to get in return. It's a good way to keep that. It will give you alerts rather than keeping it within your diary, which can get a bit messy if you are in that business development phase of your business. Another great app I'm a big fan of is SurveyMonkey. Now, a lot of people go, oh, I've just filled that in for school, or I've just used that for, I don't know, I hired something at Kennards and now they've given me a survey to fill in. Well, think about using it for your business, and you can use it at different stages. You could do it when you're first starting out, where you can gauge the interest of people around you. You could ask families and friends or trusted business colleagues what they think of a certain business name or a particular logo, or what they think of your business idea altogether. Where do they think their demand would be according to the industry that they're in, for example? You can use it once you finish a big task that involves lots of different clients. So, for example, if I've finished my BAS process, I might ask all 35 of my clients, how did I do? You know, were they happy with the timelines? Was I a bit slow? Was I responsive enough for them? Be prepared for really direct answers, but that's what you want to be able to get the best out of it. And I would recommend whenever you have a Survey Monkey going out, that you have a reward at the end of it. And you say, look, the one person will receive a $20 or $50 voucher for Kmart or Officeworks or something. Everyone can use that for business. And make sure that when it's all finished that they know that there was someone who actually got the voucher and that you weren't just lying. Another really great app I'm a big fan of course, is Receipt Bank. Receipt Bank links in with multiple different accounts softwares, and it's a great way of capturing 5 pieces of data of every receipt that you take a picture of without you doing anything to it. So, for example, you take a picture of a receipt, it will pull out the date, it will pull out the name of the company that you just bought it from, the amount, the total amount, the GST amount, and if you've entered that supplier before, it will remember what they were last time. So that's 5 pieces of information that would normally take you 2 or 3 minutes to enter into a typical accounting system or into an Excel spreadsheet, for example. Plus, it holds onto the image of that receipt and also integrates with your software, so you've got a double backup of that image too. That's a really great app and saves you a lot of time. And if you value your time, I would recommend starting to use automated apps like these in your systems. So one of the main reasons, and we were talking before about what those 3 pinch points were for businesses. They were going paper-free and understanding what they need to do with their receipts, the really difficult issues that they've got with bookkeeping. Emails and filing, we discussed that a little bit earlier, but diary management as well and how to control that diary. So I'm just going to give you some top tips on how to control that receipt beast. So every day, you can just quickly take a photo, either scanning into your cloud drive very quickly from your phone or into something like Receipt Bank. But I would suggest you write on the receipt what it was that you were doing, even if it's just, stationery. It's probably going to be quite obvious, but it does help to read your own handwriting quickly. And it literally takes 5 seconds to take out a pen, write on the receipt, and then take a photo. Especially if you're having a client engagement, like a client meeting or something like that, you want to write down which client you were with. If you do that regularly, you have to justify that as much as possible. Different accountants have different feelings about, feelings. They have different ways of looking at whether you can claim certain expenses. But if you write down what it was, there's no distinction about whether it's claimable or not. At least you know what it was in the first place. Weekly. So weekly, it's a good idea to track the transfers between your accounts because you can forget where the money went when it was flying around. Invoices out. You should be sending out invoices as quickly as possible and adding payments against invoices, particularly if you've got a program that automatically sends out reminders to your clients. You look like a bit of a twit if you haven't marked something as paid. Creating rules in your accounting software as well. As you go, make your accounting software smarter, create rules so that it gets faster and faster. Monthly, you should be reconciling to your bank account statement. So it's all fine and well to say, yeah, my accounting software works perfectly and my banks are very communicative and perfect with the way they talk to my accounting software. They're not. Don't trust them. We don't trust banks. So why would you trust them with communicating effectively on a software level? Always check your bank statements match what you're expecting to see in your software. And you should be able to find some step-by-step processes on how to do that. Tracking down the missing receipts, right? If you do that at the end of the month rather than the end of the year, you'll have a better chance of remembering what that receipt was for. And chasing unpaid invoices, do that monthly as well. Now, quarterly, I do recommend to everyone who is registered for GST to do their BAS quarterly. And the reason for that is because it makes you keep on top of things. You don't have to do it. You can do it annually. Plenty of people do who are relatively small to begin with. But then where's the fun in doing it at the end of the year? Surely you want to do it 4 times a year. No. Surely you want to do it quarterly so that you can keep on top of things and track what's going on in your business. If you do it once a year, you don't know what's going on. You haven't got up-to-date figures or analysis of understanding where you're at. You can't even talk about cash flow because you don't know what's happening with your business. So do it quarterly. Also, I've got a quick tip. This is my quick tip for the day, my quick top tip for the day. I think it's a good idea for every business to know how long it takes you to, I'll start again. I think it's a good idea for every business to understand how much it costs to run your business per hour. There's only one business I've come across where I've said to someone, so how much does it cost you per hour to run your business? And he said $62.47. And that was a plumber because he'd sat down and he'd done this exercise, looking at all of your overheads, your accounting costs, your insurance, the typical amount you pay for entertaining clients in a given year, your professional memberships, your professional, your CPD credits, your stationery, your vehicle stuff, all of your, motoring vehicle costs, your software subscriptions, your hardware purchases, everything that it costs you to run your business. Add it all up, divide it by 40 divided by 48, which is the 48 weeks in a year that we work, because, apparently small business takes 4 weeks off. And then you divide it by 40 because that's how many hours you work in a week. Yeah, because small business only works 40 hours a week. But let's look at a typical working week. And that should give you an hourly rate on how much it costs you to run a business per hour, I should say. If you're not charging at least that amount, you're going backwards. So have a think about that. Also gives you an idea about how much you should be earning each day in order to break even. So it's a little exercise I like to give all my clients. The last thing I wanted to talk about today was just a very quick overview of employee versus contractor. So when you've got an employee or a contractor starting to engage with your business, you might be hiring someone to do something for a project or for an hourly basis or to give you some assistance in the office, for example. It's really important that you work out if they should be an employee or a contractor as far as the ATO is concerned. There is a online tool called the ATO Employee versus Contractor tool. And remember, any tools that you complete or surveys that you complete on the ATO website, make sure you keep a PDF copy at the back end. Make a printable version and print it out and put the name of the person you were thinking of when you completed the survey. That's really important because any information that the ATO gives you, they are bound by. So you've got evidence to show that you had due diligence and you did the right thing and you asked the right questions and answered the survey properly, and that's the answer that you got. So it's very important that you figure out whether someone is an employee or a contractor before you begin engaging with them, because what you might find is 2 years down the track, the ATO could turn around and say, actually, I think that person should have been an employee. By the way, you've got to pay them entitlements. By the way, you've got to pay for their super, even though you think you've been paying their super as part of their invoices. So make sure you investigate that properly. Well, that pretty much sums it up for all of my admin top tips today. I've bundled them all in together for a lovely little half-hour stint there. I'm sure your brains are all very, very full. Now, as usual, our our podcasts will be available online to listen to anytime on the smallbizmatters.com.au website. Just click on the blogs and podcasts page. You can listen to today's podcast as well. That'll be up in the next few days. And make sure you check us out on LinkedIn. You can follow me, Alexi Boyd, thereby getting all the information that's coming up through and finding out when the podcasts do become available. And, of course, the Small Biz Matters Australia Facebook page, which has lots of great tips on there, events coming up, things that are going on that you might want to be aware of, and keep an idea for your diary. And make sure you subscribe to the newsletter as well, because that gives you an update on everything that's happening each week in our local area for small business. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's show. I've loved it because it's all about admin, of course. And if you want to get in touch, you can, of course, contact me via Facebook. Oh, and by the way, if you've got a great show you'd like to impart some knowledge with, just like I just did then for the last half hour, you can, of course, jump in and come on our program. It's free, and you get to use your podcast at later times for your own marketing material, so get in touch. Well, thanks for joining me, everybody. You've been listening to Small Biz Matters on Triple H 100.1 FM. I look forward to your company once again next week, every Tuesday at 9 a.m.